Hello everyone and welcome to NoDQ video right here on NoDQ.com and the YouTube channel, youtube.com/AaronRiftNoDQ. Today is a special extended edition of NoDQ video, so if you enjoyed today's video, please share it, tell a friend, and all that good stuff. With that being said, let's get down to your questions. First one today comes from Steve Appleby. Hey Aaron, what would be your dream card for Summerslam this year and why? I have a fantasy card in mind, so I will go ahead and discuss it. I would like to see Samoa Joe challenge AJ Styles for the WWE title. Why? Because I feel Joe is the top heel on SmackDown, and naturally, you put the top heel against the top babyface. Now, Daniel Bryan is right up there, but I think WWE should do Daniel Bryan versus The Miz. Do those two matches as the top two SmackDown matches for SummerSlam. As for Raw, Roman Reigns, what do you do with the guy? I would like to see Braun Strowman face Brock Lesnar one more time. If it was me, Strowman would have never won Money in the Bank in the first place. I would have done Strowman versus Lesnar, make up for that very disappointing No Mercy match. But realistically, I don't see that happening. I'd like to see Seth Rollins in a high-profile match. I know WWE did a four-way last year, but maybe they should do a four-way this year. Maybe they should do Lesnar, Reigns, Strowman, and Rollins. Either that or do Lesnar versus Strowman and maybe Reigns versus Rollins. How about that? I would save Bayley versus Sasha. They've already been putting that off for so long now. They might as well do that match at SummerSlam, although I could see them doing it sooner. I'd like to see Becky Lynch challenge Asuka for the women's title on SmackDown at SummerSlam. Tag team wise, depending on who the champions are, I suspect the Bludgeon Brothers will be the champions, so I would put them in there with the Usos. I feel like the Usos have been very underutilized as of late, and I know they lost back at the Greatest Royal Rumble, but I would get the Usos back in the mix. And then as far as Raw goes, Matt Hardy and Bray Wyatt, I would put them in there with the Authors of Pain, the biggest tag team, literally the biggest tag team you have. There's a rough idea of the matches that I would do for SummerSlam. U.S. title, Jeff Hardy, I would definitely find a suitable opponent for him on SmackDown Live. Not sure off the top of my head who I would go with. On Raw, you got to find something. Hey, maybe Bobby Lashley versus Roman Reigns. How about that for an idea? IC title, Dolph Ziggler. Kind of over Ziggler at this point. Not really digging him as the IC champion, especially with the record scratch, but it is what it is. I'd rather see somebody like Elias challenge Bobby Roode for the IC title, something like that. Just utilize some different people. So there's a rough idea of what I would do for a SummerSlam dream card if I was putting the matches together. Got this one here from SCW Wrestling Channel. Hey Aaron, what are your thoughts on the decision for WWE to release Big Cass? Where do you think it all went wrong for the 7-foot big man? And do you feel he will benefit from a fresh start in another company such as Impact or New Japan? I was not really that shocked. I mean, I was in the sense that I figured WWE would just let his contract run out, send him home instead of firing him. I feel there were a number of things that led to his release. It wasn't just one incident. Yeah, he had the backstage heat for the Daniel Bryan midget incident, but again, I didn't think it was going to lead to him being fired. There were just a lot of issues that WWE had with him, and there's been various reports out there. Who knows what's true, what's not, but clearly he did something that not only justified them firing him, but also not wishing him well in his future endeavors. What does he do from here? Good question. New Japan Pro Wrestling, maybe. He might be a novelty there, but I sense his greatest value is with Enzo. The question is, will the two of them be able to work together? There is apparently some real life heat between them, but I think if there's money to be made, I think Cass's best chance of succeeding on the Indies will be to reform his tag team with Enzo Amore. And is that something that Enzo even wants to do, not just because of the heat, but also because he is doing music right now? He's got other projects. Who knows what's going to happen with those guys, but I think them as a team would be money on the Indies. Got this one here from HLN. With the release of Big Cass, do you think him and Enzo and their WWE run was a total big waste? Everything went downhill fast when the team broke up. I do not think it was a waste. We had some very entertaining moments with them as a tag team. And even back then, I said the problem with them splitting is that each guy has what the other guy lacks. Enzo had the promo skills but lacked the size, and Big Cass had the size but lacked the charisma and the promo ability that Enzo had. The two of them complemented each other well, which is, again, why I think it's a good idea for them to reunite on the Indies, and you can do something with those guys. They're stronger together than apart. That's just my take on it, and I don't know what's going to happen with those guys, but I do feel that they're best working together, and I don't see it as a waste. I think it created some very entertaining television. It's a shame they never won the tag team titles, but sometimes things just aren't meant to be. Nonetheless, they still had a pretty solid run. Could have gone longer, but WWE had other plans for those guys, and they just did not work out. Got this one here from Jason Bush. What is next for the Velveteen Dream? Who could you see him fighting at TakeOver Brooklyn? Interesting question. I am not really sure what's going on with the NXT spoilers. I did post them on NoDQ, but I wasn't really paying too much attention to what was going on. Actually, I think I just posted a few highlights from the tapings. So at this point, there's no really clear direction from what I recall, although maybe there is. Velveteen Dream, I think, should be on the main roster soon. It's just a matter of the timing. I would not mind him challenging for the NXT World title. I'd love to see him versus Aleister Black, but there's other possibilities for Black as well. You could potentially do Black versus EC3, and I know they were building up something with Ciampa facing Aleister Black, but Velveteen Dream, I think, should have a run at the top of NXT. To me, he is perhaps the biggest standout star in NXT that I feel personally has the most potential to be a major star in WWE. You look at his age, you look at how good he has gone already. I think the sky's the limit for that guy. He might be in NXT for another year. He's so young, you could theoretically keep him there for another year. So eventually, I hope he does challenge for the world title and maybe even gets a run with it. So as far as his opponent for NXT TakeOver Brooklyn, there's a lot of possibilities. I just hope he gets on the card. Not having him on the card would be a huge mistake. I think he should definitely have a top match. What do you guys think? Leave a comment. Got this one here from James. Hey Aaron, do you think Aiden English will cost Rusev the title at Extreme Rules? I have a feeling something like that might happen. It's certainly a possibility, but keep in mind Rusev is a heel going into this match with AJ Styles. I could see AJ just flat out beating Rusev clean, and then after the match, Aiden English turns. But I really don't see a need for AJ to get a cheap victory courtesy of Aiden English. I think that would hurt AJ a little bit in his credibility as champion. Not necessary. I was a little surprised because I thought when WWE did that Miz versus Rusev gauntlet final, I thought maybe at that point Aiden English would turn and join up with The Miz and be The Miz's new henchman. Maybe be the new front man for The Miz. So they could still do that. They could still do that after the pay-per-view, have Aiden turn on Rusev and join up with The Miz. I could definitely see that happening. but I would not do it at the pay-per-view. I would have AJ just win clean. Or shock the world and have Rusev win clean, but I'm not going to hold my breath on that one. Got this one here from The Real Cindy G. Hey Aaron, who do you think is the most cringiest WWE guest host of all time and cringiest segment of all time? Whew, that's a tough question because there have been a lot of cringy segments over the years. I think worst guest host or most cringiest guest host would have to be Jeremy Piven with the Summerfest botch. August, maybe it was July 2009. And Dr. Ken, that was awful. Just awful. But there were a lot of bad guest hosts. Who was the guy on the Slammy Awards the end of that year, 2009? I'm forgetting his name now, but he was not good. And Al Sharpton was another bad one. There were quite a few bad ones. As much as I like Cheech and Chong as a comedy act, their segment was extremely lame with the Lucky Charms and just annoyed me. Some of the segments were better than others, but I would say Jeremy Piven was the worst one. As far as most cringiest segment of all time, I think the easy answer is the Triple H KD Vic segment. I think that was the segment that people generally consider to be the worst moment in Raw history, which is funny because that segment ultimately led to the beginning of the Extreme Mayhem series on NoDQ, which became XMV, and then later on that became Talk Wrestling, and then eventually I started doing NoDQ in a video, which became NoDQ video. So it's funny how things work out like that. Got this one here from Jishnu. Hey Aaron, was the Vince McMahon $1 Million Mania phone calls and crashing set real or work? The calls were real. And if you remember, there was that epic fail moment for WWE when Vince was calling the number and he got rickrolled. That was not planned. That was somebody rickrolling a person calling him, and WWE just called that number and got rickrolled. It was funny. The whole segment with the stage falling on him was a storyline. That was all designed to end the whole thing and write Vince off of television again. In a different way, the same idea, but a different way as to what they did the previous year with the limo explosion. That was done to write off Vince's character and get him off television. And this was the same thing, just not as extreme of a segment, but ultimately it was lamer. I remember that stage falling on him. That looks so hokey. Not believable at all. Really, really cheesy segment, in my opinion. Got this one here from Mike B, and this is his first question. When does Christian and RVD get inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame? I think Christian gets the call first. Do you think when Triple H takes over full-time that the WWE pay-per-views will be like the NXT ones, awesome from start to finish? All right, well, regarding Christian and RVD, who knows? I think it just depends on when WWE is going through a list and Vince decides, hey, let's induct RVD, or hey, let's induct Christian. It comes down to Vince and what he wants to do when he wants to do it. So nobody really knows, but one would think Christian will happen anytime since he's retired. I would not be surprised if he goes in within the next year or two. And RVD could be within the next 5 years. He might come back for one more run, but I feel like he's pretty much winding down his career. So I suspect both of them will be going in fairly soon. And WWE is starting to run out of main event talent. Both of them can be maybe the second or third biggest name to go in a particular year. Now, regarding Triple H and if the pay-per-views will be great on a consistent basis, I don't know about that. It's all up in the air. And with WWE going to Fox next year for SmackDown, who knows what the quality of the pay-per-views will be like. Keep in mind, NXT is 4 or 5 times a year. So when it does happen, it's more special. When you do a monthly pay-per-view, it's not quite as good because it's being done so often. Plus, WWE has 5 weeks of main roster programming every week. With NXT, you just have 1 hour every week. big difference. So I don't know how the quality of the pay-per-views would change, not just the concept of Triple H taking over, but also the importance of the pay-per-views compared to the importance of making the Fox shows as big as possible, and Raw too, for that matter, with the extra money WWE is getting from the USA Network. Got this one here from Aaron, Back in Touch Rift. With their persona, wouldn't it make them more sense to be called Insanity? And I think he's talking about Sanity here. Their current name just annoys the hell out of me. I actually like it because they think they're sane. So by calling themselves sane and then they're crazy, they don't realize they're crazy, which makes them more dangerous. If they called themselves Insanity and they admit they're crazy, are they really that crazy? What makes them insane is not knowing they're insane, thinking they're okay when they're really not. So you see what I'm saying? That's why I actually like the name Sanity instead of Insanity. Got this one here from It's the Costanza. Long time no see. Do you think Strowman versus Vader during Vader's early 90s prime would have been a decent match? Of course. I think the two of them would have complemented each other well. I think it would have been a very entertaining match. I think that if built up correctly, it could have been a major pay-per-view match. Strowman's one of those guys that I think could have succeeded in any era. Strowman, just a big, massive guy. You look at him, and I think he could work in any era, whether it was the 80s, 90s, or today. Strowman just has that pro wrestler look to him. And Vader, too, for that matter. I think Vader perhaps could have worked now as well. Both guys are considered to be two of the best big men in wrestling. And Vader was a legend. Vader was one of the top heels of his era. And yeah, I think it would have been a very entertaining match if done correctly and built up properly. Got this one here from The Sinful Saint. Have you seen Something Else to Wrestle with Bruce Prichard? And if so, what do you think about it? Just watched the WWE ECW episode and love the hard-hitting questions and answers. Your thoughts? I have watched it. I think I've watched pretty much every episode on the network. And I really enjoyed it. I understand why that podcast became so popular. I think Conrad Thompson does an exceptional job of asking the questions, and the two of them have chemistry together. Bruce Prichard is funny. He's entertaining. His impressions, though, I think are hit and miss. But overall, I enjoy his insight, and I think it's an entertaining program. And it's a nice addition to the network. And I'm glad that they're able to talk about things that at first you would think that WWE would not allow them to talk about. The fact that they're talking about TNA and bringing up Bruce Prichard's run in Impact Wrestling is quite fascinating. So yeah, I'm definitely a fan of it, and I really like the AJ Styles episode. The ECW one was great, and I'm enjoying the Undertaker one that I'm watching right now. So definitely check it out if you haven't already. Got this one here from James V. In all or most of WWE's tag team matches, the heels are in the corner forefront to the hard camera, while the faces are in the opposite corner. Is there a particular reason? Sometimes I use this placement to determine faces and heels. Interesting question. I don't know for sure what the answer is, but I'm going to make an educated guess. I would guess that it's done because you want to get the camera shots of the guy who's on the apron, the baby face, as he's reaching for the tag, and you see his desperation and his facial expression. I think that's why you do it, because it's all about the drama and the storytelling, and usually it's the heels working over the baby face, and you're anticipating that hot tag, and the guy on the apron is just hoping his partner can get to him and make the tag, and you want to capture that dramatic moment. So you have to be able to have the hard camera being able to look directly at the expression of the baby face on the apron. That's my guess. I assume that's why it's done, but I don't know for sure. Got this one here from Oscar. This month, it's the 25th anniversary of the 93 King of the Ring. What are your favorite memories of this show? And hearing the reaction Brett got all night, why did Vince insist on moving forward eventually with Lex as the guy? Well, keep in mind, the original plan was supposed to be Hogan versus Bret Hart at SummerSlam. So Luger was not intended to be the guy. I think the idea going in was Bret would win King of the Ring, Hogan would remain champion, and then Hogan would drop the title to Bret at SummerSlam. And then, of course, Hogan declined the concept of jobbing to Bret, so Hogan put over Yokozuna. Bret won King of the Ring as planned, and then WWE needed a plan B here, so they decided, since Yokozuna's the champion, and they already did Bret versus Yoko, they wanted to have Lex Luger fill in and try to make him the new Hulk Hogan. So WWE just went in a different direction because of Hogan's departure from the company. The show was great. Bret did a great job. I really enjoyed Bret Hart versus Bam Bam Bigelow. Actually, all of Bret's matches were great. Bret versus Razor Ramon, Bret versus Mr. Perfect. I mean, really solid booking and structure for that tournament. And then, of course, the big angle with Jerry Lawler was great. Hogan Yokozuna was definitely interesting, as it was Hogan's final match of his first WWF run. Really solid show. And arguably the best of the King of the Ring pay-per-views. I mean, I think 2002 was pretty good also, which oddly enough was the final King of the Ring pay-per-view. The first one and the last one I thought were great. Most of the other ones in the middle were so-so. 98 was also really strong, of course, with the Hell in a Cell, 20th anniversary of that. Plus, I thought Ken Shamrock winning was pretty cool. So that was a good King of the Ring. Austin and Kane, of course, as well. Got this one here from the Forgotten One. The Forgotten One. Hey Aaron, what did you think of the Kenny Omega versus Austin Creed street fight battle? Do you think that this is a step closer for WWE to sign Omega and the Young Bucks, since they were mentioning the event and allowing the New Day to do this? I was really entertained by it. I did watch the live stream, and it was a bit surreal to watch guys not in WWE interacting with WWE guys, and I think it's obvious. I think it's clear as day WWE wants these guys, and they're going to throw the big money at them. The Young Bucks, their contracts are up the end of the year. Kenny Omega's expires, I believe, in January. So it's going to be a very interesting period, and I think Kenny Omega was even pleased with WWE promoting it and maybe pleasantly surprised by that. We'll see what happens, because at the end of the day, business is business, and I think if WWE makes the right offer, we're going to see Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks, and maybe even Cody in WWE in 2019. So it's going to be a very interesting year, and I just think it's funny, the fact that WWE is acknowledging these guys that don't work for the company so much. You know how badly WWE wants them for sure. Got this one here from I've Got Kids 33. In honor of the 20-year Undertaker Mankind Hell in a Cell spot, would you consider this the greatest high spot of all time? Does Shane or anyone else come close? Keep up the good work. I think this has to be the biggest high spot. It's got to be one of the most memorable moments in wrestling history, just because of the shock value. Nobody saw that coming when it happened. It just was totally out of nowhere, and nobody could really replicate that. Yeah, Shane has taken some big bumps, but that was the first of its kind. And I think that's what sets it apart from the rest. It's just one of those moments you really cannot recreate. Yeah, you can have other guys taking big bumps. Foley would go through the cage again in 2000 with Triple H, but that was a one-of-a-kind moment. And yeah, I think that has to be the number one all-time biggest high-risk spot in wrestling history. I mean, Mick Foley definitely cemented his legacy with that move, and something people will never forget. I mean, it's got to be up there, top 5 biggest moments of all time, and certainly as far as physical spots in a match goes, that has to be right up there, number 1 as far as I'm concerned. Got this one here from Kayet. Hi Aaron, do you think that there is too much wrestling in WWE alone these days? Yes. All right, I'll go ahead and answer that question in more detail. I mean, do they really think we watch WWE every single day? I am pretty sure you don't watch WWE every day. I watch more wrestling than I would like to admit. But with that said, I do not watch it 24/7, nor do I have the desire to watch it 24/7, because at the end of the day, there are other things I like to do with my time on this planet while I'm here. I have other interests, other hobbies, but wrestling is a big part of my life. So I try to cover it and watch as many shows and programming as possible so I can keep up with what's going on and do a halfway decent job at these videos. But yeah, it's a tough task. You know, people say, why don't you watch New Japan more or Lucha Underground? Watching 5 hours of the main roster shows is a lot. To me, that's a challenge. But there are some diehard fans out there that will watch a lot of programming. They will dedicate their time and energy to watching wrestling nonstop. I love wrestling, but it's not everything. At some point, I gotta take a break. I gotta do something else. Nothing is good in too much excess. It's gotta be in moderation. And with there being so much wrestling, you have to pick and choose what you want to watch. I try to watch as much as possible and recommend what people should be watching. But at the end of the day, there's only so much I can watch. So I made a conscious decision to focus on WWE because that's been my main focus, 20 years now. And I want to be able to do a decent job at that. And if I watch too much, then it's going to be hard for me to really be able to do a good job. So my idea is focus on the core stuff, the main roster stuff. Occasionally I'll check out NXT. I'll watch some of the network shows, get a good idea of what they're like so I can get my thoughts on the videos. All right, thank you guys so much for watching NoDQ video. I appreciate your viewership. As always, please spread the word. Subscribe to the NoDQ YouTube channel. Stay tuned to NoDQ.com for the very latest, and I will see you guys next time.